translation. And from what I understand, we are on page 22, about halfway down, where it says to practice the real authentic dharma. So I think that's where we are. And then we are also continuing with Gampopa. And I believe we are either halfway down the list of the 10 things not to be rejected or at the beginning of the list of the 10 things to understand. And so, Dave, do you want to tell people about Don Handrick when he's coming? Because I forget the date now.
Is Don coming?
Can't hear Dave.
It says the 12th on the calendar.
Is it the 12th? Okay, yes.
Yeah, 12th, yes.
So on the 12th of April, Don Handrick will be giving a talk. And then I believe on the 19th of April, we will start up with the Tantra commentary with Vajrayāna again. And then we also in April, the following Saturday, so that would be 19. Sorry, I'm really bad with numbers. The 26th, I believe. Geshe will be giving a public talk at the library, which will also be streaming for everybody. And I think it's something like mental transformation, the path to liberation, or how to be happy, the path to liberation, like a kind of a more general talk. And then we're just going to kind of continue like that until the summer. I think we'll probably be doing 8 weeks on Words of My Perfect Teacher. And then we'll go to, the next text in that series, kind of continuing to go between them. And then for folks who are in the Netherlands, Geshe, he will at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Dutch time, he'll be continuing his teachings on Diamond Cutter and the concentration chapter of Bodhisattva Charyavatara. So I think that's everything. As we come to the last 2-3 minutes, I'm going to let everybody settle in and I'll call Geshe down and we'll get started. Please grab a cup of tea or coffee, make yourselves comfortable. So welcome everybody. Nice to see everyone. Oh, so can everybody hear Geshe-la's voice all right? Okay, great. And you can hear me, I assume. So it looks like we are ready to begin. So first of all, Tashidele, greetings to all the Dharma friends. Geshe-la hopes that you're all well and he hopes that you're all happy. So we are gathered together today. We are gathered together to do a very important task, which is really to be able to reveal the jewel that is within our minds. And this requires us really to kind of look within the mind into our mental states and to be able to recognize and differentiate what the faults of the mind are and what the positive mental qualities are that we wish to develop. And when we speak of the happiness, when we speak about the temporary happiness of this lifetime, even the temporary happiness of next lifetimes, when we talk about the final or lasting happiness, we have to understand that this happiness comes about through, in relation to that we call the I or the self, and through transforming the way of thinking of that I or self, right? This is how it comes about. And in terms of what the I or the self is, this may seem something that's like very straightforward or very self-evident to us initially, but actually it is not something that is so straightforward. And if we look at some of the philosophical conversations between, for example, the Buddhist and non-Buddhist schools of ancient India, we see that, you know, a conversation about the nature of this self or this I is something that continued for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so one of the things that the sort of Buddhist schools and also the non-Buddhist spiritual traditions of that time were able to identify that they shared in common was an understanding of some of the coarser afflictions. In particular, for example, the affliction of attachment. This was something that they were able to sort of identify, to recognize and reduce. And so then in terms of kind of the discursive thoughts, in terms of the unpleasant feelings and so forth, you know, if we check those carefully, you know, both those other traditions and also ourselves, we're able to sort of identify and see how those are operating relatively easily. And so, for example, kare kontro dang duchak drewa so then as we look at the relationships between the afflictions, for example, it is quite easy to see how anger often arises in relation to an attitude of attachment, for example. Yeah. Chala di trola donor. So then, for example, we can think about how these afflictions arise, for example, regarding objects. So if we are attached to, you know, it can be anything from sort of an apparent material object to sort of more subtle things. If we have an attachment to that, and then that object is damaged somehow, or we lose that object, we can see that anger, right, quickly follows from that experience.
다 잘라 싫어 저 배드 저 매봐 만 진지지나 될라 때비다 데크마 쇼와도 될 바제슈나 요 대화 초와 진지지 용이야.
And so then if it is an object to which we have maybe, let's say, a more moderate attachment, that we have a more moderate clinging towards, if it gets damaged or lost somehow, right, the anger or the upsetness that we're going to experience will be relatively more moderate.
다 잘라 보게 요바지 둘러앉아 사기지는 데크마 쇼와 이나요 소속 다 가와지 마도 파시 기본 매바 뛰는 용이야.
Whereas if we have an object that has already been kind of broken or not functioning properly for a long time, and somebody were to steal it or something like that, we know that the mental upset that we're going to experience in relation to that, it's not going to be very much, right?
다 대강가 다 보게 끼고 요매 초와 강가 된 컨트롤 있는데 초와 있는데 그뭐 쳐야 돼. 내 잘라 되는 여기 요바도 또 시워치 대강조 하고 있어.
But when we look at these kind of relationships, we can see that whether we talk about anger, whether we talk about jealousy and so forth, often those afflictions can be traced back to an attitude of attachment in relation to a particular thing, right?
당연히 단다 잘라를 빼자로 봤다. 멀리나 란디 타설 빼자.
So Geshe said mainly we talked about kind of material objects in this example, right? But you could very easily put the example of a person in that, right? And think of someone who you're very attached to or less attached to and so forth.
다 데레 단 대절을 두고 요바다 시워 코 살레비티 사버렘도 할리라고 하고 있어. 다 대용 파파 대주잖아 대로 와이나 짜와이나.
So an interesting thing too about this attachment, right? We have this experience of attachment to an object, but if we start to look at the more subtle levels of that, we can see that that is very much also connected to the attachment that we have towards the self, right? Towards the I. We'll be able to see that.
아니 쇼로바도 너무 세이나 제바시기신 그때 젤리라 보고 돈이 다 렐레 제바시나 라테그리 라테 도요하는
And this is another kind of understanding that we can see is sort of shared in common between the Buddhist and those non-Buddhist traditions of Sanatana Dharma, for example. We can see that the attachment to the self is very much connected to those attachment and those reactions to those external things, yeah?
다 던지게 너를 쳐봐 대요 파 대로바이나 다 만다와 디니 슈마레스
Younger Sundam,
너를 쳐봐 대요 다 저거 가와니 용디 제바시비가라 다 디니 쇼로바도 너무 만다와 쳐.
It's how the attachment to that self, it's the how and why of how that attachment to the self arises that you start to see a divergence, right? That you start to see different ideas between those sort of non-Buddhist philosophies and the Buddha Dharma.
But
it's very clear that even before the Buddha came into the world, right, that those rishis, like the highly evolved practitioners of those extant traditions, they could see the connection between the attachment to those external or material things and the attachment to the I or the self. So I'm sorry, I just got like a list that I wasn't prepared for super fast, so I'm gonna ask Geshe to slow down because so I want to get it for you. So the first one, right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Gone so tambo labia di kalikani sungdang madujang akomaso. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Right. So what the holders of these outsider tenets, as we call them, or these holders of these non-Buddhist traditions did, is they sort of delineated a difference between pure and impure based on the self and the aggregates. So the aggregates were seen as impure, the self was seen as pure. The aggregates were seen as unclean, the self was seen as clean. The aggregates were seen as impermanent, the self was seen as permanent. The aggregates were seen as in the nature of suffering, the self was seen as in the nature of happiness, right? So this was the view that those practitioners had.
다 손지페는 다 던지치네 야와시네 다 다파 다 아니 다 드바 하고서라
다도 줘봤잖아.
다 드바 덴바 드바 다 드바
러서.
하고서라 다 던지치네 데바이나 다를 쳐바데 가디이나 템보서야 지레도 마도 아니 저 녀모 메바서야 타레.
The Buddhist tradition, on the other hand, advocates the view that as long as we are holding on to those aggregates and to the self as truly existent, we will never be able to completely defeat attachment because we will never be able to understand how they really exist.
다 던지치 자 손지가 드츠다비 치사 라시데네 시사만도 세다 다메 비타와데 그거줘야 되레.
So therefore, when the Buddha says, I have discovered this nectar-like dharma, but there is no sort of disciples suitable to receive it, it is really the teachings on the nature of the self that we are talking about.
다 드츠다비 치데 다 나로서 드츠카 다 니네 간데시레도 다 로로소소 다 레와 고시 시라 고시네 다 가줄래가 조체게야 되레.
And so to discover this nectar-like dharma and to be able to appreciate that nectar-like dharma, our task then as the practitioner is to develop our understanding by bringing forth our wisdom. Then we shall be able to comprehend it.
다 텔토 포게테 제바시도 시소나 첸들이나 인터넷 다 가리나 샤와지 아니 샤와네 샤와다 포게 타발 니르니르 다 로레 다레스.
And if we develop this wisdom, then not only will we be able to be happier in this lifetime, but we will be able from lifetime to lifetime in the future to continue to develop our wisdom, to be able to develop our understanding.
다 드츠 세겐도와 드츠 세리다 나로솔 먹이야 디 짐메와서 그다 드츠다베다 조잘로 코레스.
And so the Tibetan word for amrit or nectar, and in our text of Words of My Perfect Teacher, you'll see this is translated as ambrosia. The Tibetan word is dutsu. Du actually means demon or mara. Du anetsu sana.
디시 메와서 소소치 지와라.
So this refers, Geshe said, to the four maras, right? We can understand that's referring to the four maras. See?
주스르다 대핀 와토네 메와서 키테.
See means to transform. See means to transform. So it's, in other words, it's an elixir that transforms demons, if you wanted to get into the etymology of the Tibetan word.
다 다도 디시라 특게다 거로포게다 야쇼테 시라 야쇼데 이자 다 드츠세기야레.
So this wisdom is the supreme wisdom that can lead to the ultimate happiness of liberation. Therefore, this wisdom is likened to nectar or to amrit.
다 모자스테다 대가신 보이자 탐적이 살레레치네다 언도이스.
So then that was sort of maybe a bit, Geshe said, of a long-winded introduction. So now we come to our main topic. And so we'll begin, but I see that our sound, sorry, I just want to change the sound. There we go. So we're going to take a moment again. No, Dino. So bring forth the intention to place the body and mind into a peaceful, relaxed state. like a cloudless sky without any object to point at or to grasp at. Think that the mind is empty and vast, very relaxed.
Tene se ronji lumatek tola page lele de akchet sena mandu se unjunga ru tola lele chinjayaji.
So think to kind of settle a little bit more into this neutral state of equanimity of the fundamental mind. We're going to place our attention, our mindfulness upon the breath.
Uyale so mando so techibo lele chinjayaji.
Just a relaxed awareness, a simple mindfulness. Breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out.
Chomebi tsawa notu kangata leka mevashini. Ta jayawa ta pashalo yando so mano.
So any unhelpful thoughts, feelings, discursive mental noise and so forth, think that through focusing on the breath, they are dissolved away.
Ta teni kala ron sosola ta mali yabote. Ron soso ta karache do mache ta ron soso la baliyo. Ta te pas chawa pas tsuba chiktian do ita leka chi so mano.
So think I have this human body, this human life in my hand, and so whether this becomes meaningful or not is my responsibility. Think I will do something meaningful with this human life.
Tanjola nimbo le thoba shi so ya ta lenge zo de te da yong chi so wa chi chi te ta yo so ma chi.
My primary responsibility is to take the essence of this precious human life. In order to take its essence effectively, I will make praises and requests to the holy beings for inspiration to do that. So we'll begin with the prayers. Tumbo jom den de jin sheba dra chom ba yan da ba zo be sang ge je ba dang sha su dem ba de war she ba je den gem ba ke bu du we ga lo gyor wa la na me ba la da mi nam gi tem ba song ge chom den de be gya wa sha gya tu ba la cha se lo che de kya besu ji o
Tenpa chonden de deshin sheba drachompa yang daba zobe sangye riba dan shasu tenpa dewa sheba jite tenpa chebu dewe kalo gyorwa lana meba ladon minangye tenpa sangye chonden de bejawa shakya tuba la chase lo chede kyabzu chi Tenpa chonden de deshin sheba drachompa yang daba zobe sangye riba dan shasu tenpa dewa sheba jiten kempa chebu dewe kalo gyorwa lana meba ladon minangye tenpa sangye chonden de bejawa shakya tuba la chase lo chede kyabzu
Seven-line prayer to Guru Rinpoche.
Hung Ogin Yugin Ujan Song Pema Gesar Dombola Yatsen Chegin Ngajunye Ngodrup kanjo mambe ko gergi Jesu darugi jinji lo Guru Pema Siddhi Dusum Sangye Guru Rinpoche Ngodrup Kunda Dewa Jembeja Bache Gunze Dudul Jabo Zezelwa Depso Jinji Labdusu Jinang Sangwe Bache Shiwa Dang Sambalungi Drupa Jinjilo Oma Hum Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Hum 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 So Ji Medo Chan Ri Rab Lin Shin Ni De Gyam Ba Di Sangye Shin De Mi De Bo Wa Ki Joko Nanda Shin La Che Pa Sho I Dang Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryataya.
Sorry. Refuge and bodhicitta.
Chedan Sogi Chunam La Jangju Badu Dani Gyabzu Ji Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sonam Gi Jola Penjir Sangye Joba Sho Chedan Sogi Chunam La Jangju Badu Dani Gyabzu Ji Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sonam Gi Jola Penjir Sangye Joba Sho Chedan Sogi Chenam La Jangju Badu Dani Gyabzu Ji Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sonam Gi Jola Penjir Sangye Joba
Oh yeah, that to me shawa. Ani how ta kanu, rawa? Pembi to ngai no pembi to sa te rawa no bores.
So then the first thing we'll do is set the motivation, which is part of the activities at the beginning. And as setting the motivation is also called the force of the power, or the force of the projection when we talk about the five forces.
Oh, kanu ina yo ta no roje kangala ta pembi se za chesu chi ta si ta gi te ne te yo so ji ma to ba de mat ne ba yor to ya mat ta nyom ba shi me so ma ta.
So we can think to bring forth this mind that seeks the ultimate benefit for oneself and others. This is the sort of supreme mind, and that we want to be able to bring this mind forth continuously without degeneration until we achieve Buddhahood.
Oh, that lise shawa lele to ne do gi so ba chen ka ma chi sing kan si ta gi.
And we're going to take just a minute to develop that motivation, to establish it, and also to proceed with a steady and calm mind.
Yuwa ja cha nyom ba ta ka zi to lele chi gi so ba chi.
So first, direct the attention to the body and think. The four elements within the body are coming into balance.
Yuwa ja lele yin te ne te la te be se yon lele te ne te la te ne za to ta lu to ka ri yin ta shawa lele yo so ma ta.
So as we relax into that mind with that motivation, think we bring those elements into balance. We bring those chakras, the channels, and the winds or the prana into alignment, and the energy can flow nicely.
Lu se zu ma zo ya ge ten ta shlu pa lele jin ta ba chi te ma so.
So what we're going to do is breathe out, hold it for a moment, and then breathe in as a way of sort of cleansing the winds and calming the mind. So breathe out deeply, hold, then breathe in 3 times.
Cho me be so no to la so ba ta lu to no na ge ka bi ga no ba ta ro ga ni ka la ta si ta ya chi.
Younger Sundam.
Cho me be so to no to ro chi. So ma chi yo ro ba. Te ji ka ga ge ka bu da ba lu to no to la.
Part
Ga ni
pictures.
ka le yo ba chi. Ga se le yo ba chi. A ni ka.
Yes, jag får komma som kind. Gå ner, Younger Sundam.
Wo ji lu to no de yo ro yo ro ba. Ge ka bi ga no ba chi ta di le si ta as.
Kawala.
Ta ni ro ni ka.
Ningala. So then as we breathe in and breathe out, imagine the mind as a ball of white light in the channel at about the heart level.
Pe se a te do no no za yin no ni do ta sho ba te so so ma.
And as we recite Pe, we'll imagine that the sphere of white light representing the mind goes up the central channel and shoots into space.
Pe
Pe.
no ka ja chen bu tu no pa yi ni ta za zu sa me ba chwa so so ma.
And then we imagine that the white sphere,
That
that white sphere dissolves into the expanse of space, and in this way, the mind becomes vast and all-encompassing. And in this way, the body and mind are in a peaceful state.
당연히 그 고시는 받아와 이나 로지 요주 지라다 손지리 자 전부
So when we kind of touch this aspect of the fundamental nature of the mind, its pure luminosity, we see how we can activate our supreme potential. And it is through activating that supreme potential, what we know as the Tathagata Garbha, the Tathagata essence, or the Buddha nature, that one can bring forth supreme benefit for both oneself and others. And we do this based on the fundamental knowledge that every single sentient being is just like the person who is closest to us, the people most precious to us in this life. There is not a single one that I could point to and say is my enemy. Thinking about those beings to whom I am connected, think how wonderful it would be if they could have a permanent solution to freedom from suffering. May they be separated from suffering. I myself will help them be separated from suffering. I have all of the conditions available to me that can bring me to a state where I can meaningfully help them to separate from suffering. May I reach Buddhahood in order to help them do that. So my task, which is to be able to decrease the faults of mind, to accumulate positive karma and develop positive mental qualities, because the faults, the qualities, and karma lack inherent existence, I can definitely achieve this. So we'll pause there. Sometimes Geshe expects me to fill in the blanks, right? But I don't want to do that. That's a slippery slope. I want him to say it so I can say it. Domba. Soso tabe domba do.
Domba tamar dom.
Dama dam. Ale.
Domba so samba.
Ale. Domba sum sene kare.
Domba tela to diwas chila.
Domba sum kandis lagre hamo ko dit soso cheshi jamne de nesi kako yongeres.
Sango jowan jonchi ani seje domba. Ani ngeje meme domba.
Kuma sum.
Domba sum. Shivu domba.
Ale. Yes.
Dombi se domba.
Ale. Loso.
Ya yowa. Se
Ale,
loso. Ane ngijil meme tomba roji meba.
Ale, la.
Ju ngwa tomba.
Okay. So Geshe is speaking about the three important things that we need to bring forth with this motivation. The first is this motivation of bodhicitta, considering all sentient beings. The second is that those considered sentient beings lack inherent existence. And the third is the dedication.
야 돈바 숨 세도야 돈바 시부 돈바 돈바 숨
And so these are known as the three holy things, the three holy things.
요와 돈바 니제 돈바 주 돈바
So holy in the beginning, holy in the actual session, and holy at the conclusion.
다 대체바 이네더니 개와 가디나 출라 먼저 다 버겐 제거 순지 마토 받은 제거라 노셰 주야다 다 든지 지세요.
And if we establish those in the beginning, then part of those merits will be able to bring forth a positive results without degenerating right up until Buddhahood, right up until enlightenment.
다 나저 거 단계시 있다 비가라 다 니시 다 자이 계셔래. 성와 타마를 용거와.
So we did the first two of these parts about the bodhicitta and contemplating the lack of inherent existence. And so we, at the end of the session, will do the third of those, which is making the dedication. So if we have the bodhicitta, the awareness of the lack of inherent existence, and the dedication in place, then in terms of the merits of the session, if we get angry or something like that after, they will be protected, right? That anger will not be able to degenerate them.
다 때린다. 돈 벌서들 소소 담만 돈 두개 가르다 이들은 면서 시타진 되네.
고맙소.
제가 여기서 소소 두개 로그 되어서 다른들 줄로 오면 돼요. 다 상선을 만들고 있어.
So we will begin where we left off last time.
다 가정 안조 어느 멀리 때렸다. 론종아도 젠종아도 다 뒤께자대. 대 뒤니마자.
So we talked about the freedoms and endowments. Here they're called the advantages. And we talked about the ones related to oneself and the ones related to others.
야, 다들 한마디 대용요 답이 돈베치 나마시 접바나 멋접바시 네바 기대 매일 리테시 마토 나나 네소 설리 좀시 던로이 조 다다 매나 예베 던로 주인지 바도 도체와소 저조조와 저와 시라요 다다 체지 오만은 빼면 홍시 차지제나 체수지 반저로 시메죠 디치좀 치좀 먹고 대용 뭐시 마용 뭐니 타나 다다니의 좌저체요 그래 대발에 타제 전부作用 so 뭐시 디바다.
Okay. Okay. To practice real authentic dharma, it is absolutely necessary to be a human being. Now suppose that you did not have the support of a human form, but had the highest form of life in the three lower realms, that of an animal, even the most beautiful and highly prized animal known to man. If someone said to you, say Om Mani Padme Hum once and you will become a Buddha, you would be quite incapable of understanding his words or grasping their meaning, nor would you be able to utter a word. In fact, even if you were dying of cold, you would be unable to think of anything to do but lie in a heap, whereas a man, no matter how weak, would know to shelter in a cave, under a tree, gather wood, and make a fire to warm his face and hands.
So Geshe
said that he wants to quantify this, that there are some animals actually that he thinks are quite more intelligent than this, but perhaps they are the exception. Like Geshe, for example, has met some parrots who he thinks are very intelligent. So Geshe has heard a story of a lama, and it's not a story from so long ago, right? It's a lama who was alive at the same time that his teacher, Khenso Rinpoche Delik, was a young man. So this lama, he spent a lot of time in retreat, and his attendant during retreat was a parrot that he had specially trained. So when people would approach the lama's house, the parrot would say, "You can't come here, the lama's gone into retreat," right? And he would be able to do that. Yeah, so there's a lot of stories related to that parrot, some of which we can share later.
어다 단다다요 Dza Patrul Rinpoche 수송와 어다 담도 다 몬치아지 바와 어다 저런 많은 진대셔도 송지 이거래서나 건적게 제시 시그 말에 거싱 말에 다 던지 니네 때에 전에 제봤더니 요아레스.
So, of course, Dza Patrul Rinpoche here speaking, Geshe said about the majority of animals, and it's true that it is the case that if you were to tell them to recite Om Mani Padme Hum and hence be able to achieve enlightenment, not only would they not be able to kind of even just repeat those words in most cases, they wouldn't be able to bring forth any comprehension of the meaning, no matter how much you explained.
어다 던질 따와 이네 다 로로서서 단다 멀려 바다 그메 할레비다 디세자 침보치레티 요아레스.
If we look at that, and by comparison, the sophistication of the human thinking, we can see that we have a very special opportunity and time in front of us, actually.
어다 땡이스야게 제단디림 레시 먹어 자기 와라와스.
And so it is to be, Geshe said, a lot of these explanations in this part of the text are really aimed at that, at recognizing the special opportunity we have.
단디님 맞아다 어다 모치안다 와서나면데 때에 말로이 있어 모세스.
So Geshe said that because a lot of the meaning is sort of driving home the same point, he's going to read through the text at a good clip so that he can get to some other points that he'd like to explain more in depth.
어다 맞지죠. 루바이나 다 컨디션이 차소라서 이사 다 텐데 보게 소소 저도 가르리나 다 텐데 빠져도 강을 배도 지금 거죠.
So Geshe said that as he reads this text, and it's kind of like an oral transmission. And Geshe said because he received the complete oral transmission of this text from His Holiness the Dalai Lama in some teachings, he does feel that transmitting the text carries some blessing to you. And so we will read it out together.
다로사 노시 주모 돌는데 느끼고 말했어.
So Geshe said at that time, it was a very cold weather actually when His Holiness was teaching on this. So it wasn't the easiest conditions. Yeah.
어다 뒤에서
Yeah.
어다 머시나는 머시나 저따를 예좀 걸어 개비시 뒤따버신데서 메시터네 메고 동때 칼라 소시바 대조용 던돌라면나 치드비 소노 따제미 다 메이는 좋아서는 걸어 다 대해서 조본조사도 다 가리나 칼라서야도 가리나 시야도 다 던돌던디 파스 메바이는 치 델리주 가와요 아레스.
So Geshe just glassing that point again, like how a human being, no matter how weak, they would know to make a fire to warm their face and hands and so forth. So when us as human beings, when we're oppressed by heat or cold, we have kind of the knowledge and the intelligence to be able to do something about it, to reduce the suffering. But many animals don't even have that.
할라소바 리테즈무시 좀 소타지도 바 체니비 네다 마쩨비 템바용서 주바 루질라토베 까와도 마뎀바 이 달하테징안조 이나 사테세 기보도 저거 요하르 때네 이나요 어느 소타가 돈비 때마 이자 다 델리주다 마요하가레스.
So then just I'll continue reading what Geshe read. If animals are incapable of even such simple things, how could they conceive of practicing the dharma? Gods and other beings of the kind, however superior their physical form, do not meet the requirements laid down for taking the pratimoksha vows, and therefore cannot assimilate the dharma in its totality. So Geshe here glossing that the devas, or the gods, it's considered a quite good rebirth, right, with pleasant conditions, but they're not able to receive the vows of individual liberation. So it's considered inferior to a human birth.
어단저거도와 여이시발라 시반달라 사세저 이도 치세저 유인이래 돈보셔 손좀벨레게 예제 이 자가도지데 까와좀비 송지पे네 까와똥조 문지반주의 네바도 자데 노라 어느 조와 따바 따르네바 이스숑주지 신게 젠바샤바 데니 조시비
And what is meant by a central region? One should distinguish between a geographically central region and a place that is central in terms of the dharma. Geographically speaking, the central region is generally said to be the Vajrasattva Buddha Gaya in India, the center of Jambudvipa. The 1,000 Buddhas of the good Kalpa all attain enlightenment there. Even in the universal destruction at the end of the kalpa, the four elements cannot harm it, and it remains there as if suspended in space. At its center grows the tree of enlightenment. This place, with all the towns of India around it, is therefore considered the central region in terms of geography. So Geshe said that this is beautiful because here the author is praising this holy land of Bodh Gaya as a holy place and proposing it as the center of the world. Geshe wonders if modern geographers would agree that it is the center of the world. However, he appreciates the spirit in which it is said. And Geshe also said that if the world is totally destroyed, will Bodh Gaya just be sitting there in space totally protected? He hopes so, but not sure. But not sure. In Dharma terms, a central place is wherever the Dharma, the teaching of Lord Buddha, exists. All other regions are said to be peripheral.
So
Geshe said that if that means wherever the teaching of the Buddha is present, this means that a large swath of the world could actually be said to be a central place, actually, if you understand it that way. Luna yagidu nga kyopologi. Yeah. Kojongi. So okay, so Geshe and I are wondering, as we continue in the text, there's kind of two options. One is that we just listen to Geshe in Tibetan, and then when he stops to gloss a portion of the text, I just translate Geshe-la's gloss. Or do you prefer me to read the English of what Geshe covered? What do people prefer? Okay, Geshe says just read it this time. If you have a different preference, let me know. In the distant past, from the time Lord Buddha came into this world and as long as his doctrine still existed in India, that land was central in terms of both geography and dharma. However, now that it has fallen into the hands of the Tirthikas and the doctrine of the conqueror has disappeared there, as far as dharma is concerned, even Bodh Gaya is a peripheral place. In the days of the Buddha, Tibet, the land of snows, was called the border country of Tibet because it was sparsely populated land due to which the doctrine had not yet spread. Later, the population increased little by little and there reigned several kings who were emanations of the Buddhas. The Dharma first appeared in Tibet during the reign of La Totori Nyingsen, where the Sutra of the 100 Invocations and Prostrations, a tsasa mold, and other objects fell onto the palace roof.
Dato yege sola la jaga yege sola su yege la so pala la ni be yege me pala yege sote sherezi chen doji ne sa chi do ane nyembo sonwa la so ba peke de jabi chewi noro de ma dong lembo ga dong se yesu ke chota na so la de jato babi jabi simoni zmo sibi zose tembi jacha josha noni la so te so te su tama sheji rewe rasa chono go chula kong ji tan de tong
Yangdul
타용
타도당 양도.
다도 용도 저줄라 공 담아지데 돈비치죠 소테
Dishash. Okay. So then reading the next part. 5 generations later, in accordance with the prophecies that he would understand the meaning of the sutra, there appeared the Dharma king Sonsen Gampo, an emanation of the sublime compassionate one. During Gampo's reign, the translator Tomi Sambota was sent to India to study its languages and scripts. On his return, he introduced an alphabet to Tibet for the first time. He translated into Tibetan 21 sutras and tantras of Avalokiteshvara, the powerful secret, and other texts. The king himself displayed multiple forms, and along with his minister Gartongtsen, he used miraculous means to defend the country. He took as his queens 2 princesses, one Chinese and one from Nepal, who brought with them numerous representations of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, including the statues called the Jo Miko Dorje and Jo Shakyamuni, the actual representatives of the Buddha. The king built the series of temples known as the Tadul and Yongdul, of which the principal one was the Raza Trulnang. In this way, he established Buddhism in Tibet.
다 기빠쪼지데 저다 그 손지가 그 때니 예를 만다와 다치 못 저기가 되니가 보여라야 된다 침보지 자로를 위해서.
So Geshe said, behind all of this history here, one of the things that we can understand is the supreme kind of importance and holiness of the Jo image, so the Shakyamuni image in the Jo temple in Lhasa, right? This helps us to understand that.
디 자랑아 봐 라시 처소데 제지 리라르바 사선한 데다도 제 링아 총침보 어지지 캠보 뼈만주네 라수 베트다 자도 안에 자도 짜지르 짜제 대종 소위 먼저 선지 저비 줄라 라수 그때 줄라 공바지르바 로체 베르자나라서 로자 자도 안에 자도 짜지르 자도 짜지라 로자라데 자가 파피yana 저저타이 도지 떼지지 지비 숭게데르다 수때 돈비치저 세무 머디라소 라드 슈데 아니 게이데르와 게이데 투제 때한테 겐데제 대주바 소순지제 때만이마 샤와타르 제바네 주이 디타티 바다 템발라 펜더 찌리바 슈용 His
fifth successor, King Trisong Dützen, invited 108 pandits to Tibet, including Padmasambhava, the preceptor of Vajrayāna, the greatest of the mantra holders, unequaled throughout the 3 worlds. To uphold representations of the Buddha's form, Trisong Dützen had temples built, including unchanging, spontaneously arisen samye. To uphold the Buddha's speech, the authentic dharma, 108 translators, including the great Vajrayāna, learned the art of translation and translated all the main sutras, tantras, and shastras, then current in the noble land of India. The 7 men for testing and others were ordained as monks, forming the Sangha to uphold the Buddha's mind. From that time onwards to the present day, the teachings of the Buddha have shone like the sun in Tibet, and despite ups and downs, the doctrine of the conqueror has never been lost in either of its aspects, transmission or realization. Thus, Tibet, as far as dharma is concerned, is a central country. So there have been ups and downs, Geshe said, but in that land up until the present, then both lineages of of transmission and of realization have remained, and in this way now they have been able to benefit the whole world. And we can think that this central land has spread, for example, anywhere in the world where there is a dharma center. This dharma center is hopefully established and exists for the purpose of upholding the doctrine, the Buddha Dharma, and benefiting sentient beings. And in this way, wherever there are places that are doing that, then this is of great benefit and they are a central land.
Tisoji Sura Rinpoche Tawato, Yambala Subi Kawato Madebi Chumuda Genya Mariwa Yi.
A person lacking any of the 5 sense faculties does not meet the requirements laid down for taking the monastic vows. Moreover, someone who does not have the good fortune to be able to see representations of the conqueror to inspire his devotion, or to read or hear the precious and excellent teachings of as the material for study and reflection, will not be fully capable of receiving the dharma.
So we see here,
Geshe said, that we can understand this is just talking about how being of complete faculties is something that will make it a lot more easier or more conducive to be able to hear the dharma and to reflect upon it.
Leta loba shi this one. Nyambatu mezumala subi rigita shewi chungani lecha talobi lord shubala seyo akusarawa. Then the gos chingaja shawa shetse le leta loba shuba yembe datawa tombo mashe jo shisen junyewa yembe.
Conflicting lifestyle refers, strictly speaking, to the lifestyles of people born in communities of hunters, prostitutes, and so forth, who are involved in these negative activities from their earliest youth. But in fact, it also includes anyone whose every thought, word, and deed is contrary to the dharma, for even those not born into such lifestyles can easily slip into them later in life. It is therefore essential to avoid doing anything which conflicts with the dharma.
Yeah.
So the instruction here is that one may not have a terribly negative view from the beginning, right? But one can easily fall under the influences of others and follow into negative views and conduct, and thus it would be a conflicting lifestyle.
Ta tevine sujije tembala mate nana ye jite lala towochela soba nodo shiro mate be tembala soba jezo ta dewashi jo kowa dongen suga dunga le shoba manipi ani jayi temba luto tupi dani jela jese shipi deba toba no ngota be chije ne manoa yembe runjo.
So concluding this section now, if your faith is not in the Buddha's teachings but in powerful gods, nagas and so forth, or in other doctrines such as those of the Tirthakas, then no matter how much faith you might place in them, none of them can protect you from the sufferings of samsara or from rebirth in lower realms. But if you have acquired a properly reasoned faith in the conqueror's doctrine, which unites transmission and realization, you are without doubt a fit vessel for the true dharma, and that is the greatest of the 5 individual advantages. So then, of course, even if one is, let's say, born in a central land where the doctrine of the Buddha is strong and shining like the sun, if one is not able to bring forth interest, faith, or confidence in that, then they cannot bring the said benefits.
And
if we look at that in light of our present circumstances, we will see that we are somebody with a precious human life who has very fortunate circumstances, a great opportunity in front of us. So we did the advantages related to oneself. Now, and now we talk about the 5 circumstantial advantages. Yeah, and so the ones related to oneself, Geshe said, think about that. It's not so easy to have all of those conditions come into place, right? And then when we look at the 5 circumstantial advantages, these are more related to external kind of conditions. Those are not easy either.
템바 체바체 좀바
다
좀보
A Buddha has appeared and has preached the Dharma. His teachings still exist and can be followed. There are those who are kind-hearted towards others. Those not born in a bright kalpa, one in which a Buddha has appeared, have never even heard of the Dharma. But we are now in a kalpa in which a Buddha has come, and so we possess the advantage of the presence of the particular teacher.
다다나 연종가 있는 동보텔 손지 다시 먼저 벌레도 폐요 바치 다 땡간도 초다 다 폐요
So Geshe said here, just to go to the point, we talk about these 5 circumstantial advantages. So what is being talked about here? It's the first of these, right? Which is that a Buddha has come. A Buddha has come to the world.
시에조 치마테나 뭐펜발레 치코름바서 템비 안에 템바 돈비치 진좀바 니바
Yeah. So although a Buddha has come, if he had not taught, no one would benefit. But since the Buddha has turned the wheel of Dharma according to 3 levels, we have the advantage of the teaching of the Dharma. Sum dang tepa gudro go tantarwa.
말가 됐어. 가르데 캔서 나게세.
Zubudra.
콜로 름바서 세나 콜로 동보 콜로 바바 콜로 타마서 다 꼬니라다 So
Geshe said that when we talk about the turning of the wheels, we talk about the 3 turning of the wheels of the Dharma, right? The initial turning of the wheel, the middling turning of the wheel, and the final turning of the wheel. Gonda, denso sum dene? So it is a time where the Dharma of those 3 wheels was taught.
소진 점벌레데 페바이나요 샤지지 셰글 치마스바 데바라와스 데노지 가디기나 주잖아 아
켄에 고마선 시시시그 그래
소진 점벌레데 송진네라 니마지지 셰글 치수야 마라와스 데노지자 디세리 오주바이나 데네요
So if we reflect on the story of the Buddha, right, we know that even after his enlightenment, he remained for 49 days without speaking the Dharma. Right? So if the Buddha does not speak the Dharma, they can't be of much direct benefit to the world. So that's number 1, the Buddha appeared, and now the second, right, that the Dharma has been taught. The Dharma has been taught. Although he has taught, had his doctrine died out, it would no longer be there to help us. But the period during which the doctrine will remain extant has not yet ended, so we have the advantage of time. So Geshe tying this into that third point, his teachings still exist. The teachings are still present.
Oh, yeah.
Although the teachings still exist, unless we follow them, they can be of no benefit to us. But since we have taken up the Dharma, we possess the advantage of our own good fortune. So this relates to can be followed. Although we have taken up the Dharma, without the favorable circumstance of being accepted by a spiritual friend, we would never come to know what the Dharma is really about. But since a spiritual friend has accepted us, we possess the advantage of his or her extraordinary compassion. So this is that last point from the verse at the top. There are those who are kind-hearted to others. Geshe continuing with the next sentence, because these 5 factors need to be complete with regard to circumstances other than one's own, they are called the 5 circumstantial advantages. So Geshe said you can see the similarity between Dza Patrul Rinpoche's presentation here and the presentation of the Lam Rim, right, of Lama Tsongkhapa's tradition. We talk about the 8 states lacking leisure or freedom, so we are parted from those 8 states which lack freedom, and then we have the richnesses or endowments that pertain to ourselves and the richnesses or endowments that pertain to others. So very much a similar teaching.
So
the human body that we have right now, Geshe said, it's during a previous lifetime. Geshe said we can't be for sure which
previous lifetime it might not be the immediate previous one, but we did something right. We engaged in great effort to be able to have the cause of the conditions we enjoy now.
다 루루 소소가 다 요아르도도 뉴르도 사소다다 기대야래.
Yeah.
તને 다 대시 템포 질런도도 가 과할 템포 데오 루루 소소라 발요.
So we can see ourselves now as being sort of right at a crossroads or right at a border crossing, whether we go in a better direction or whether we become even more kind of entrapped within the muck of samsara. This depends very much upon the actions that we engage in now.
다데 데메 지워데레 다 마가서 듣던 로기스.
Los.
단다
Tepa
진짜
Losolo. Tepa Rinpoche drogime. Okay.
네, 괜찮아. 달라다 용거는 근데 제일 괜찮아.
Losolo.
제일 먹기 제일 작아.
Los.
내가
Majogida.
나한테 지워에서 마테서 로기스.
So Geshe said that this particular section on the 5 circumstantial advantages, it's quite long, so we are going to go at a good clip.
오야 대용 시파 차니 좋아 시파 차네 지 동지 유라 까와시 잡발레 어다 까와 차바 까와 네바 까와 지바 tani kawa tongwa sa da jil rawa.
So the time, so Geshe says, we're continuing, the time it takes for the universe to form, stay in existence, and be destroyed, and to remain in a state of emptiness is called a kalpa. So Geshe said that we talk about like the arising, the abiding, the destruction, and then there's that moment of kind of emptiness before another arising.
단저 kawa chabi ani kari disenyesha an jibi ka nenyesha ota nyeshinyeshi jitsu yales.
And so Geshe said that kind of each of those forming, staying in existence, and destructions, trukshu, tama? Jashu. And abiding in sort of emptiness, each of those are given a count of 20 for a total of 80.
Oh, this one. Dubi suji jite de shena rawa. Dekadon suji mashe be kala mamba shi tabale. Ngendi pitena kawachimo nyamba gawala suji she diego de mambe kawa jashu. Tene kawa jude shi javala suji shawa twa. 예지슈 디고도 타고저 가와 자슈 디고도 가와 손데 시자와라 손지지 샤와 촤 예제 자진주 디고도 멈비가와 나자슈 데니 가와 통하나 가와라 손지샤와 촤 예지슈 데네 멈바가 가와 르베 가도 가와 드자슈 데네 가와 가와도 뎀바 손지 뚜차 저지슈 디지라 가와서 뭐 드니 슈와 이데사.
Okay, so very detailed here. A kalpa in which a perfect Buddha appears in the world is called a bright kalpa, while one in which a Buddha does not appear is called a dark kalpa. Long ago, during the great kalpa of manifest joy, 33,000 Buddhas appeared. 100 dark kalpas followed. Then, during the perfect kalpa, 800 million Buddhas appeared, again followed by 100 kalpas without dharma. Then, 840 million Buddhas appeared during the excellent kalpa, after which there were 500 dark kalpas. During the kalpa delightful to see, 800 million Buddhas appeared, and then there were 700 kalpas of darkness. 60,000 Buddhas appeared during the joyous kalpa. Then came our own kalpa, the good kalpa. Listen.
Oh, tere ta dene kawanda macha bin aroto satan zo mulin de segyorwa. 마차 뱅아로도 동스제 동자서 친구 지도 제대 야발라 메도 빼마 다마 또데 동시에는 누바 소리질 하노지 지세 지시 내시지 따비 다리지 까완달라 손지 동제바 디 된지 예바 시대 다리지 까완달라 까와좀보 이노시 까위 미 좀보타바 저.
So then Geshe said, before our kalpa arose. So Geshe said you can understand our kalpa as the arising of the world that we now inhabit, right? That's how to understand that. This cosmos of 1 billion universes was an immense ocean on whose surface appeared 1,000-petaled lotus. The gods of the Brahma world, wondering how this could be through clairvoyance, understood it to signify that during this kalpa 1,000 Buddhas would appear. This will be a good kalpa, they said, and good became its name. So good became the name of this time period.
Oh, 다들에도와 다시근노지 첼로 제트비 디스 손지 코완지 셴바니 주데에사 타르시근노지 첼로 빠메 트비 디스 손지 메바시메바다 손지 동지데제 콘데르사 좀벌리 이 도지디데 셰데 넘바주바 손지 치주 콜로코와 치비 데메카와 이.
From from the time when beings' lifespan was 80,000 years and the Buddha destroyer of samsara appeared, and then up to the time when beings who live incalculably long and the Buddha infinite aspiration will come, 1,000 Buddhas will have taken their place in this world on the Vajrasattva at the center of the continent of Jambudvipa. Each one of them will have attained perfect Buddhahood there and turned the wheel of dharma. Therefore, our present kalpa is a bright kalpa. For those of you who care about precise translations, I would say it's not called a bright kalpa, it's a kalpa of the lamp, or an aeon of the lamp would be the translation. Yeah. Gu. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So Geshe said that when we talk about the realms within samsara, right, we talk about 9 realms, we talk about 4 form realms, 4 formless realms, and then you add the realm we inhabit, the desire realm. This takes us to a total of 9. And so to be able to kind of free all the beings of these various realms from suffering, and to be able to lead them to the ultimate bliss of liberation, then the Buddha appears in the world. So when we talk about the 9 types of beings, Geshe is saying, he wonders, he's thinking that it would make sense to him that these 9 types of beings are the beings that inhabit these particular realms, right? 4 form, 4 formless, and finally the desire, total of 9. So when we talk about all sentient beings, it's good to kind of conceptualize that. One way of doing that is to think of these 9 realms. Yeah, so there are 9 particular realms. That's one way of thinking of this division. We could also think of the 9 different types of sentient beings, right? Odhyana di.
So Mambikawa to Demikawa Dima Jumale, Mambikawa to Tena, Kenjo Sanjo Datso yo me, Tele Josunga Dojite Temana Rengazzoli, Manjute.
So it will be followed by 60 peripheral bad kalpas, and after that, in the kalpa of vast numbers, 10,000 Buddhas will appear. Then another 10,000 bad kalpas will ensue. In this alternation of bright and dark kalpas, should we happen to be born during a dark kalpa, we would never even hear that there was such a thing as the 3 jewels. So how great is the opportunity that we have to be born in an eon where the teaching is present, but in this eon or kalpa not only is the teaching present, but there is a synthesis of both vehicles of a sutra and a tantra that are available to us.
Sunjin nge shuge jabo shichayi temba la sunga jache doaso. Tati sunji shaja tibi temba la sunga shela. Tata rewe tati kawa shewan dipi wota kawa metu keba shishawan juyi tse sunjin jombe yung shishawa tata do tsutam tsutu bashin jute di sunga jache temba njaro. Kawa tesa na dowa na netruyi sharo. Kawa tesa mayimba di no yung sunga manjute senje no.
Moreover, the Great One from Odhyana, so that's Padmasambhava, points out the secret mantra Vajrayāna in particular is taught only rarely. Long ago, during the very first kalpa, the kalpa of the complete array, the teachings of the secret mantrayana were promulgated by the Buddha known as Once Come King and achieved great renown. The teachings we have now, those of the present Buddha Shakyamuni, also include the secret mantrayana. In 10 million kalpas time, during the kalpa array of flowers, the Buddha Manjushri will come, as I have now, to reveal the secret mantra teachings on a vast scale. This is so because beings in these 3 kalpas are suitable recipients for the secret mantras, and the reason why the mantrayana teachings do not appear at other times is because the beings of those times are not capable of making use of them.
this one. Oh, that didn't do. That mean don't want you get on the tongue of them, but this one to judge you and away. Oh, that's all about to me, but that should soon do us.
So it is said that actually when we talk about the teachings of Sutra and Tantra, that within an eon where there are 1,000 fortunate Buddhas, only 3 of those will teach Tantra. So we see how rare Tantra is.
She soon but Tarikawa Zumbundi, Shaganoji, Telojavi, Tinder, Zubesunji, Shachatavanji, did the Shambi, Jamaica, Suji Shajo Ti, Chimusumba, Suji. Nyojala because pana suji shejo ane temba tombi chicha noa maybe suji mashepa to che mete dacha ke tembi chonsa doji de chonju shute de ngamba zoba sonji gombo ne den zene saji tita ke sandi mashi dita bi chishi da gini sela de jo ko manje mama na da nya da ni parsha shi su ne de twa de chi masu ba yubi Sumbato Jaji Chichokolo Kowa Sowata Taba
Suppose that a Buddha had come but was still in meditation and had not yet taught the Dharma. As long as the light of his Dharma had not appeared, his having come would make no difference to us. It would be just as if he had never come at all. On attaining total and perfect Buddhahood upon the Vajra seat, our teacher explained, I have found a Dharma like ambrosia, deep, peaceful, simple, uncompounded, radiant. If I explain it, no one will understand, so I shall stay here silent in the forest. Accordingly, for 7 weeks he did not teach until Brahma and Indra begged him to turn the wheel. So Geshe-la's friend actually mentioned that he finds this very odd, that it is said that many of the supreme Nirmanakayas, the supreme emanation bodies, can stay not just days but actually many years without preaching the Dharma, and he finds that very strange. But it actually makes sense. Think about it. If there's no disciples, in other words, if there's no people interested or willing to hear what is being taught, then how can there be a cause for the Dharma to be preached? And in that case then, right, the wise thing to do would be to just remain in silence. So think about how important it is for us to maintain our interest in sort of hearing and studying the Dharma, because of course if we were born in a dark eon, we wouldn't even hear the name Dharma, the word Dharma. But if we were even in a bright eon or an eon of a lamp where the Buddha was present, if nobody requested or was interested in the Dharma, although a Buddha's there, they wouldn't be preaching, so not much use. So that's something to reflect on. So that also Geshe-la said a nice thing here too is that these Vedic gods like Brahma and Indra, we shouldn't be too dismissive, because if you take these words at face value, actually, they were supremely kind to us. So it is said that Brahma and Indra, these Vedic deities, they were also the ones who were sort of waiting to greet the Buddha when he was born, putting out their hands so that he would not have to step on the rough earth after being born, and giving him ablution in the form of a bath offering. So Geshe-la said that you might be familiar with this ritual of the trusul, which is the bath offering, right? Maybe you've seen it before. You have like the bumpa vase and a little mirror and you pour it on top. This actually kind of represents that offering of ablution to the Buddha using the nectar of the gods. So not ordinary water, but amrit, or the nectar of the gods. Also, it is said that actually, the Buddha, as we know, when he was Prince Siddhartha, he left the palace. So Geshe-la was just kind of explaining that there was actually hardcore security at the palace. So normally it wouldn't have been able, Siddhartha wouldn't have been able to leave undetected. But it is said that once again, Brahma, Indra, and these other Vedic deities, they kind of manifested a situation where all of the security people fell asleep. And it was only because of that that Siddhartha was able to leave the palace.
다 되네 손질 로트를 가와시에네 손진네 침무스니 샤지 체크되네 다 치수를 치세네 거기서 뭐 찾았더니 짜치고 앞에네 코스틱 저와자기 건설해.
So we know that the Buddha then he underwent like many years of austerities and he achieved enlightenment. But finally, after achieving that state of Buddhahood, he remained for 49 days without saying anything. And it was only again because of the intervention of these Vedic gods, Brahma and Indra, making the request that we had the turning of the wheel of dharma. So once again, a great kindness from those deities. So Geshe said these deities were important in the beginning, when the Buddha was born, in the middle, when he left the palace to renounce, and in the end, when they requested the turning of the wheel of the dharma. So that's quite, Geshe said, an amazing kind of interdependence, right, between these traditions of Sanatana Dharma and the Buddha Dharma. Yeah.
电子机器我弄就用到别东北期间前年满在哪能先见了你是拍都把干的变了这个就没定价呢别的对别的嘛对别的嘛阿嘞别的嘛你这一年别的嘛你这一年我是得了先别弄的老早我学没的可是 초대 깨다 못해비 류즈용제 치진도베 체 마슈잉오니 중송이
Yeah. So furthermore, if those who hold the authentic teaching do not explain it, it is difficult for the Dharma to be of any real benefit to beings. An example is the great Smriti Jnana of India, who came to Tibet because his mother had been reborn there in one of the ephemeral hells. His interpreter died on the journey, and Smriti Jnana, who was wandering around the province of Kham unable to speak a word of the language, became a shepherd and died there without having been of very much benefit to anyone.
Yeah, so
Smriti Jnana was like kind of the supreme scholar in India at that time, right? So a very holy being.
So
Geshe said something a bit interesting in the text here. So Smriti Jnana, maybe he had some clairvoyance. He was wondering where his mother had been reborn after she died. He saw that she was in one of the ephemeral hells. We could say like a border hell. And Geshe said the book is equating that hell with parts of Tibet, right? So that is why he left for Tibet.
So
he went, right? I mean, this was a holy being. He went with very high kind of wish to be able not only to benefit his mother, but also to take to this kind of wild place, to take the Buddha's teachings there and to establish them, right? But he wasn't able to accomplish that. So unfortunately, the main problem was that his translator died, and then because he didn't speak the language, he wasn't able to preach the Dharma, and so the most that he could do was take care of the sheep and the goats. And dilogorebe lakore. George pelebdu dene cheronso sonam nyamso.
Shiso jo laji bedo sheka de tsembe di tsembe azama che be senu re chu ne jaga shana ni na beto da ji la jo mo den jana le lo ba me su sha tamo ja de xie zhuo xuan du.
When Jo Atisha later arrived in Tibet and learned what had happened, he cried out, "How sad! Tibetans, your merit is weak. Nowhere in India, east or west, was there a pandita better than Smriti Jnana." And placing his hands together, he wept.
오 다들 디나 다리 소지 샤차트위 치조콜로 럼바서도 고데 데지가와도 좀 꽤 와 소지 마차바 데네 테바름바 게 치지 단저 티르 딜라가르데 소지 마차바 데네 테바름바 게 치지 데자
For us, the Buddha Shakyamuni has turned the wheel of the Dharma on 3 levels and manifesting in an inconceivable number of forms according to the needs and capacities of those to be helped, leads disciples through the 9 vehicles of his teaching to maturity and liberation. So Geshe said the 9 yanas, or the 9 vehicles, is a very important presentation of the divisions of dharma according to the Nyingma tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. Nyentögi tekpa, rangyegi tekpa. Ole, ya kunjung jumpe tekpa. So Geshe is saying that these 9 are divided into 3 categories. The first of these 3 categories is kunjung jumpe tekpa. So the 3 outer yanas leading from the origin. The 3 outer yanas leading from the origin. So Geshe said the 3 outer yanas leading from the origin, these are the vehicles of the Shravakas, the hearers, the vehicles of the Pratyeka Buddhas, the solitary realizers, and the vehicle of the Bodhisattvas. Geshe said leading from the origin. Why did they call them leading from the origin? Because it is through abandoning true origins that these beings become enlightened as Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, and so therefore these are called the 3 outer yanas leading from the origin, because they abandon true origins. And so then the next category, and yes, I checked this several times because I think people might think the name's a bit funny, but I checked this several times. It is the vehicle of Vedic asceticism. The 3 outer tantras. These are known as the vehicle of Vedic asceticism. Katup Rigpa Tekpa. Sorry, Katup Rigchiki Tekpa. Sorry. And so Geshe said the vehicle of Vedic asceticism are these 3 outer tantras of Kriya Tantra or action tantra, Charya Tantra or performance tantra, and the 3rd Yoga Tantra. 3 outer tantras are known as the vehicles of Vedic asceticism. And so then the last 3 are known as the 3 yanas of powerful transformative methods. So they belong to the vehicle of powerful transformative methods. Mahayoga.
Mahayoga, Anuyoga, Adi-yoga.
And these are Mahayoga, Anu-yoga, and Ati-yoga. Most people will probably be more familiar with Ati-yoga by its other name, Dzogpa Chenpo, Dzogchen. And so Geshe said that those 3, it starts, of course, with generation stages of highest yoga tantra, but then comes to the completion and perfection stages, right, with Dzogchen, with Ati-yoga. So we are still very fortunate. We have this great opportunity because the teachings of the Buddha, which shone like the sun upon this world, and those 9 vehicles that were propounded as those teachings are something still available to us. Niku Gyomares.
There is no tone tangent, Tawaja, Jobat, Milita, Chimodrite, or that Pisana Shonilla, a niche in Guyama.
So there's a story Geshe said that that he wanted to share, which is just of an individual who heard that these teachings were still present, who thought that he possessed this precious human life with all of the freedoms and richnesses. Having come upon this precious jewel of a human life, he vowed never to sleep. There was no time for sleep, trying to make the most of this opportunity. His teacher scolded him and said that your health is very important for the practice of the dharma. Without sleep, the winds become out of balance, the organs will fail, and your chakras will not be malleable. He refused to listen and said, by seizing the essence of the freedoms and richnesses, I will be able to perfectly purify the winds and the chakras. So he did not listen to his teacher's advice. So, not maybe advising that, but really taking the spirit of this, which is that we have this amazing opportunity with the freedoms and richnesses of this human rebirth. So therefore, we want to have this courageous attitude, right? This determined attitude, really to make something worthwhile of that. So Geshe said also, we need to be realistic about where we are, right? We are not kind of superior beings with samadhi or concentration who don't need a lot of sleep. So we need to also contextualize this with one of the powers explained in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara is the power of rest. So we do need to rest. Geshe said that that's maybe only directed at a couple of people because most of us are actually pretty skilled at resting. So he wouldn't say that we need to worry too much. So Geshe said, please be relaxed in your spiritual practice, but be steady, be consistent and steady. And then you really have a reason when you relax to say, actually, I can relax because I did something worthwhile. So Geshe said we didn't get a chance to go to Gampopa today, but no problem. We have lots of weeks ahead, so we will get to him next time. So J. Milarepa, Lord Milarepa, he had two disciples, which were one was said to be like the moon, and the other was said to be like the sun. Nimadapo Gampopa. The sun-like disciple was J. Gampopa. And so we don't need to explain then how kind of holy and precious the instructions of J. Gampopa are. And of course, we will take every opportunity in the coming weeks to cover a little bit of this text as well. So Geshe said, thank you very much. With a mind brought forth in joy, let us make the dedications. With discernment that we have definitely accumulated some merit, definitely purified some negativities through this session, then bring forth a joyful voice in dedication. Jangjo semjo rinpoche maje banam chejur che chewan yamba meba yang gone gonde bewa sho tongni tawa rinpoche maje banam chejur che chewan yamba meba yang Gone gondu bewar sho jambe pao jidar kemba tang kundu zambo deyan dejinde
Deda kungi Jesu dalo jir Gewa deda tamje rabdungo Dusun shebe gyawa tamje ge Ngowa gangla chodu ngabade Dagi gewe tsawa dikun kya Zambo jeje rabdungo wagi Gangri rawe kowe shinkande Pendan dewa malu jongwe ne Chenre ziwan tenzen jatsoye Shabe zide bardu tengyo
소소가 교와서 빈니바텔라 되는 다른 좀들들 강에 간절들과 뭐게 뭐든 내요 요아지 내발로 수바다 망고발이나 가리나 바샤와도 레레쳐야지.
So through the virtues that we have accumulated in this session, may all of the difficulties in the world that could cause problems to sentient beings, all of the wars, diseases, imbalances in the elements, natural disasters, and so forth, may these all be cleared away, and may beings abide in peace. May the sun of happiness shine with equality throughout all of the various abodes of samsara without exception. May my study and practice be able to flourish into understanding just as I wish. So let us open up for questions. I always say, because we do tend to go over, if you need to get on with your day now or at any point, please feel free, but you are also welcome to stay for questions. And Geshe and I are always happy to stay here for your questions as well. So would anyone like to start?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
If you live in the good kalpa like we do now and we practice Buddhism, what happens if you don't manage to reach enlightenment before the end of it? You go to a dark kalpa, then what? What happens to us?
Yes, I got your question. Yes, Daphne, thank you. Yeah. Nganso di kandislagure junme kalpa dena ine junme kapla mazo bardu jangchu matobna dene munpa kalpa legire dua dene so junme kalpa kola kale jayadi kare pengires kare chegores munpe kalpa kapla
me ta ne ndel der mambe kawal mashena was ne janda la korot de bi kawatri war was what the relation was.
So Geshe said that if you had been like fastidious in your practice during that eon of the lamp or during the bright kalpa, even if in one world system it became a dark kalpa, you have a really good chance of being reborn in another system where it is still an eon of the lamp, where it is still a bright kalpa. So that's what would happen actually.
So they're not simultaneously. It's not a dark kalpa everywhere.
Yeah, dene nganso di munpe kalpa kasa kalamare roi jiten chikine so. Yes, Geshe said correct, right? There are other worlds, or maybe we could even use the word like universes, where it will not be a dark kalpa. That's correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So Geshe said it reminds him of Daphne's question reminded him of a story actually, where one of the Buddha's, very important here disciples, Vajrayāna Putra. Vajrayāna was kind of walking towards the Buddha. He wanted to ask him something, but he possessed some clairvoyance, and he could see that the Buddha seemed to just be sitting there, but what in actuality he was doing was teaching the dharma in many other realms.
다 된다 오지레스 네 젠달 고르면 미가와이나 네 젠달 순지게 템바 지네 우긴다브나 요아르와스.
So Geshe said it could be like that, right? That in a particular kind of world system, that it may be an eon of darkness that had happened, but there will still be other world systems where it is still an eon of the lamp, where the dharma is still being taught.
Okay, good. Thank you.
No problem. You're welcome, Daphne. You're welcome. And anybody else?
I'm again interested in the meditation that we did today, of the having the ball of light, which is our mind, at our heart, and then sending the pay upwards. Could Geshe explain the significance of the pay and how it was said rather gently?
Yeah, I think, it's not, Geshe's not always gentle with it. He's sometimes more forceful. Maybe he's feeling more relaxed, but yes, I will ask that for you, Annie, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Ganso ngunjogi gom jaya dirwa, ganso di soso sem högi boli dabo chik ningla yores rwa, dene ganso pe chik jogire dua, pe digi donda kareres, ane dering halepe lulushe son, di pe lulushe gi gimsen kareresa. Yeah, kasha mepa dering.
Me 다 배우게 된다도 다 거기에 가르쳐 맹한다고 지금 돈이라. 야 루야 야 본도야.
So Geshe said pei is a syllable that is uttered, and it's according to some essential instructions, right? So it is said to be a sound which is kind of lung nupa drogire, which allows the wind to move upwards in a very effective way, right? So that's why the syllable pe is chosen for that. Yes. So Geshe said it's very similar to, pem dabochiro. Geshe said it's similar to that. It's not exactly pe, it has a different ending, it's pem, but the pem in the Vajrayogini practice that you do, right? So it's a little bit similar to that in terms of the function. So in the Vajrayogini practice, when we say pem, it's really calling upon the deities that are able to benefit us, calling upon them for their help, right? Yeah, so it has a different sort of slightly function, but here it's related to the wind element.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Annie. You're welcome. Ha So Geshe said, he said usually the pe and the ha are used together, right? So Geshe didn't say the ha this time, but the pe is when that ball of light goes up into the sky, and the ha is when it absorbs into the expanse, right? So Geshe said, this isn't something that he made up. It's actually kind of like an oral instruction that has been taught by several holy beings. So it's said to be really helpful for kind of the mind when there's like a lot of discursive thought and things happening. But this pe and ha instruction is said to be so powerful that even when one has like wind disease, when one has like a pranic imbalance, it can be very helpful then as well.
Thanks. Is the pay something that you visualize as the syllable, or is it the sound that you're listening to?
Pei yige di se taugo marerwa. No, it's just uttered. It's just uttered.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question?
Manoshi, I see you there.
Yes.
Do you have a question?
Sorry. Yes, my screen went up. There we go. When we do this pei and ha, I noticed that, maybe there's nothing to be said, but I noticed that I get a bit of a headache.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I don't know, we do this in other practices and it's fine, but in this particular situation, in this practice, I don't know why. Maybe there's nothing to be said, but it's just an observation.
Ko pei dang ha di sam go nagires. Ganso nyamlen jenda do some pem dang den so dabo di kavla kangeyo mare ne pe dang ha di ko sam go nagires gitu. Yeah, so then Geshe said maybe, there's many different practices, maybe that this isn't the one that is really like suited towards you, but one thing you could try is not saying the pei very loudly, just thinking of it as a mental thought and seeing if that helps.
Sure. Thank you.
But Geshe said, remember, there's many practices to still the mind, not just this one. You can do the 9-point breathing, you can do the mindfulness awareness practice. There's many other things you can do. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but Geshe said, like, if you're feeling like a physical discomfort from this, maybe better not to do this one or to do it more gently. Yeah. Do you want to do that? Anything from social, Dave? No? Okay, it's a quiet thing. Ngunjo sena? Can I say that? Yeah. Mari hindi sena karires. Simple mendus. Milu Rinpoche. Yeah. Yeah. So Geshe said that since there's a mayako komaso, if I don't understand, what can I say? So Geshe said that we talked about, like, all of this part of the text, right, is about recognizing and wanting to make the most use of this precious human life. So please tie that together with what he said about the beginning about developing our wisdom, right? Because developing the wisdom is really the way to take advantage. Yeah. So also keep in mind what we mentioned about the afflictions, right? That the main thing that is preventing us from taking the advantage of the human rebirth, right? This is the summary of the important points. From taking advantage of the human rebirth is the afflictions. The affliction which is going to be most pernicious for us in the beginning is attachment. But that attachment is very much arising in conjunction with how we are conceiving of the self, or how we are conceiving of the I, right? So all of these fit together. So the reason that attachment is arising in relation to the conception of the I is because of that fundamental mistaken mind, which we know as the ignorance grasping at the self, right? So that's kind of like the next stage. So Geshe said that at the time the Buddha came into the world, right, the self was conceived of in a certain way, in like those kind of non-Buddhist philosophical or spiritual traditions. And in fact, by the doctrine of selflessness was something that the Buddha knew would be really challenging for a lot of people. So that's why in some sutras of the Buddha, it seems like he's sort of saying there is a self. It's for that reason. So there are sutras where they seem to advocate for a self of persons, sutras which advocate a self of persons. And so then are those sutras Buddhist or not Buddhist? And are the people that are following those sutras Buddhist or not Buddhist? Well, Geshe said you can kind of deal with this qualm by saying that there are two types of Buddhists. Buddhists primarily through their observance of the view, and Buddhists primarily through their observance of conduct. So those are kind of like the main points, and then it's through thinking about those that we want to develop a feeling, right, for the impetus in the text.
다 로에 강가 여러 두개 들어왔어.
So all of the Buddha's teachings, all of the various paths were propounded for the sake of bringing forth wisdom, right? Shantideva says this in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, and so it really kind of gives us an idea of how important wisdom is.
로조 연다 몸보지 가로서 맞센데를 거 차소나 거 뭐고 대마지로 왔어. 또만이 되지 라 차소나 뒤때는 주대 거 대마지야 매바다 가디나 키워테 계속 침모라.
Semare ngosutoba.
chama.
So Geshe said that so much of our education and the things that we learn in school, we tend to forget very easily. But remember that an understanding of emptiness, not the direct realization, so the understanding, right, the correct valid cognition or pramana of emptiness, that will not be forgotten. Kewane kewa drogide is
오다 시원에 시원을 타네 잠바치네 제메 바시라고 요요 왔더니 대시게 다니 마셔만 이기네레스.
So that pramana not only is that pramana of emptiness, that correct valid cognition of emptiness, not forgotten. It carries forth from lifetime to lifetime in the future, which will become the cause of like the sun of happiness shining from rebirth to rebirth.
오다 던지지 있다다 가위 뭐네 로주체나 코파게스타 유아르 싫어 로야지 마토타니 갈래요.
So therefore, with a mind brought forth in joy, right, engage with these teachings to develop wisdom, knowing that as it develops, things will only get better and better. And this is kind of the supreme meaning of this human life. And so that's why we really want to put effort into our cultivation. So thank you. Geshe says it seems there's no questions, so we'll end a little early today. It was so nice to see everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tuche nang.